Internet friends. Welcome to another episode of the SynergyCafe online show, featuring speaker, entertainer, close-up illusionist, and marketing alchemist, Magic Brad. It's the Internet lifestyle show about career, finance, relationships, spirituality, and wellness. We're moving the online chatter over to real-life activity. And now, please welcome your host of SynergyCafe, Magic Brad.
Hey Internet friends, Magic Brad here, SynergyCafe and the Synergy Collaborative, and we're doing another one today. This is interesting because this is sort of a video podcast, and the guest I have on, his name is Steve, and he's a podcast guy, so he's going to show us how to do real podcasts. I just do this as fun. You there, Steve?
I am here, Brad. Good to be with you.
All the way from the East Coast. You must just got out of bed.
Just about, yeah.
I've been up. We've been waking up really early lately. Me and my wife, about 3, 4 in the morning. Oh my God! But I'm an early riser.
Well, I tell people I sleep like a baby. That means I wake up every 2 hours crying and screaming.
I was gonna say, do you poop your pants?
No, not that. Not yet.
I'm good. Okay, the way I do these interviews, I do them kind of quick, and it's just to get that know, like, and trust factor out of the way. So I ask, who are you? What do you do? Where do you do it? When do you do it? How do you do it? And then why do you do it? So the first question, Steve, is who are you? Married, kids, pets? Who the heck are you?
So I am Steve Lubetkin, Podcast Steve on Twitter. And for the last 12 years, I've been a professional podcaster, one of a very few who are doing podcasting the way I and my co-author, Donna Papacosta, do it, which is to produce podcasts for corporate clients. And we've written a book about it called The Business of Podcasting, in which we try to explain to people that for most podcasters, the business model of I'm going to be famous as a podcaster and then advertisers are going to come knocking at my door to pay me money, that doesn't work for most people. What works for most people in podcasting, if you want to build a reliable book of business, is to learn how to record podcasts and edit them and do the post-production, get all the gear you need, and then sell your services to corporate and organizational clients.
Got it. And now, are you just podcasting, or you do video podcasts, like vidcasts or whatever you might call
them?
Well,
it started with just audio podcasts, and within a couple of years of getting into the business, and this was about 2004, 2005, the clients started asking about video, and that was at a time when you may remember the only kinds of devices you could play video on were very expensive iPods. And most people didn't have them, and I kind of pushed people off for a couple of years, but we eventually did have to get into doing video. And so we do a lot of corporate video. We do documentary-style videos. We do tribute videos. I even do a few news videos. I call them news wrappers because we wrap up the news story in a video package, very much like what you might see on network television with a stand-up reporter interviewing the people at the event. So we do all kinds of stuff like that. We do in-studio interviews. I have a fully configured studio. You can see part of it here in the basement of my home. And
that was one of the questions I was going to ask, because that's kind
sure.
of the what you're doing. Is you're doing podcasting, with basically communications, audio, and video. And then is where you do it. So do you do it just there, or do you actually go to the corporation, or do you do things like remote? Do you teach people, like, can you teach people in California how to do what you're doing?
Yeah, we do a combination of things. A lot of our clients are more comfortable having us face-to-face to record with their executives. So we do go face-to-face with portable digital recorders. It's gotten a lot easier and smaller over the 12 years I've been doing it. We also do a lot of Skype interviews like this one, or we do them over the other internet-capable audio channels like Zencaster we've used. So we do record remotely, and sometimes we just do it over the plain old telephone. We have that capability as well, but we do some here in the studio and many, many more out on the road.
And the next question is when. I got two forms of when. One is, are you an early person or a late person? Do you like to work at night, or you like to work personally? Do you like to work in the morning or the evening?
You know, I used to work in the evening hours after we watched our evening television shows and my wife went off to bed. I would come down to the studio, but I've gotten a little older, and I find I don't have the same kind of energy to stay up until 2 in the morning, so I pace myself. I tend to work in the morning and the early afternoon, and then I take a break about 3 or 4 o'clock. And if I have projects to work on, I'll go back to them, a little bit later in the evening. But for the most part, we work our schedule around the client's needs.
That was what I was going to ask about that. So you could kind of, like, if a client says, I don't have the time today, we've got a business to run, but I'll tell you what, I'll stay after 5, and could you do it then?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we do.
Very cool.
We try to bend to the flexibility, to the needs of the client. I have a couple of clients in New York City, so I'm often on the road to New York with the portable podcasting kit. And by the way, on the website for the book, we do have a checklist that people can download if they want to build a portable podcasting go bag, the kind of a case of equipment that you leave in the car so that you can always be ready to do a podcast wherever you are on the road.
Yes, I've got mine right here, a little portable tripod, extends, and it's got my phone, and that's...
Sure.
I'm not as professional, but functional.
It's whatever works for you. And what we try to teach people is how to take it to that next level and to make sure that you have the right professional gear to do stuff. And frankly, one of the reasons I wanted to write the book with Donna was that I've had a couple of cases where clients have asked me to be in two places at the same time to record podcasts. And it was very hard for me to find another podcaster who not only had the skill set to record a remote recording of a podcast for a client, but also had the gear to do it. Because too many podcasters are buying equipment that is tied to a computer, like a USB microphone,
right,
or they only record on the computer. They don't have digital audio recorders that they can take with them. And it was very hard to find people. And so, what we counsel people to do in the book is to get the equipment that they can use in multiple ways. A portable audio recorder can be used to capture natural sound at your favorite wildlife refuge if you're doing a wildlife podcast, and it can also be used in an office environment to record with a scientist or an engineer at a company that you're doing a podcast for.
That's really cool. I mean, going back to the time end of it, I like to do things, like I said, in the morning, and it works really good for me to be able to be remote because I can do these side-by-side interviews and things with people that are over in Bali, Indonesia, where it's PM for them, it's AM for me. It works out really good. But what you're talking about is the ability to be flexible and mobile. See, because I didn't think about that. If all of a sudden I don't have Wi-Fi access, I'm dead in the water, whereas you would not be.
And one of the problems that we've also found, as I said, many people record with a USB microphone directly into a computer. And Donna and our experience has been that if you are depending on a computer to do the recording, for a mission-critical recording, that's precisely the time the computer's going to decide it's time to update Windows. And the recording will crash. Windows will update, but the recording will crash. And so we always encourage people, if you're outside the studio, think in terms of using a dedicated recorder. A lot of people, there's a lot of talk on some of the podcasting forums about which microphone should I use with my iPhone to make audio podcasts. And my first reaction to that is, don't use your iPhone, or at least don't depend on it as the only thing. Mm-hmm. Again, my experience with using a cell phone, it's got so many things that it's running for you, different apps and different functions, that when you turn on the audio recorder to record a mission-critical recording, that's when the battery runs down really fast.
See, there's lots of things like that are just common sense, but if you don't think about them and do like what you and your partner are helping people do, you don't get it. Like, as an example, I can just do my stuff with my iPhone, but if I'm trying to do something like, the new president that's coming up, and right about now, okay, and now introducing our new president, and all of a sudden, and it goes down,
sure,
that wouldn't be good because it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. But if you're just doing random things, it's a different story. So it's really cool that you've got all this experience to share all those things that might go wrong, and you can you could prevent it by using the right equipment.
Well, I spent about 5 years working in broadcast radio before I spent most of my career in corporate PR. But I learned a lot about radio production. I learned a lot about news gathering and how to get good audio for news reports. And so a lot of that knowledge is the stuff that I'm passing on in the book. So, we want people to learn that there are professional ways of doing things. And it's kind of a head turn for a lot of people who are not used to working in a corporate environment. They think that podcasting has to be a free and easy thing. And when I got into podcasting, the first thing I was impressed with was a lot of the podcasts I was listening to reminded me of how people acted and spoke when I was in college radio back in the ancient days of the 1970s. People were very interested in talking about what microphone they were using or what buttons they were pushing on the control board. And the audience really isn't interested in that stuff that much, unless it's a podcast about podcasting, which to me is already too self-referential.
It's interesting you bring it up. I was just watching a thing this morning. I think it was on like Smile Time or something like that. And there's these people talking about business, but all they're talking about is the technical end of how things aren't working. And there's really nothing. I don't want to know what's not working. I want to know what is working. So I totally get it.
And when I listened to these early podcasts, the thought came to me that this could be an extraordinarily powerful tool for organizations to communicate with their audiences, but it has to sound almost as good. It doesn't have to sound as good, but close to what you would hear on national public radio. And if you can get to that level of quality, and by quality I mean people have to have an understanding of how to engineer the sound. Too many podcasts don't understand how to level the sound, and the listeners are constantly cranking up the level because one of the people on the podcast is too low. Right. And then when you go back to the other person, it's too high, and blood shoots out of your ears because the volume's too high.
I run into that with radio interviews where someone's calling on a phone, and somebody else, the broadcaster has professional equipment like you, and the other person's calling on a phone, and you can't. So
but there are tools that we can use to smooth that out and to take some of the noise away. And we talk to people about that. We don't spend a lot of time on the mechanics of podcasting. We talk more about building a business as a podcaster, how you set up a business, how you go after clients, what kinds of things you can expect. Like in a corporate setting, almost always there's going to be some involvement by lawyers. And podcasters are often not ready for the idea that someone's going to review the work. And we give people some practical tips on how to deal with legal review of podcast content. We give people some ideas about agreements, how they make their contracts, how they set up their billing rates or their pricing for podcasting. It's all about making it into a business where you can actually make some money rather than, gee, I hope that somebody hears me and I become famous. And one of the other things about podcasting for corporate clients is they're not as concerned about getting millions and millions of listeners. They're after very, very narrow, specific audiences. And one of the examples I talk about in the book is a global insurance company that we did podcasts for a number of years. They're not interested in millions of people. They're interested in the few thousand people in the country who need their very complex business insurance products.
Right.
And if they get 2,000 or 3,000 listeners to a podcast, that's a huge win for them because that's 2,000 or 3,000 half-hour phone conversations they didn't have to have.
Right. You're broadcasting.
Exactly.
Well, I want to get into my favorite question, but before I do, I actually want to hear about how people can get a hold of you, so I'll do a little cliffhanger thing. And first I want to ask is the big why question. Why is it that you're doing this, and why aren't you like a barber? Or why aren't you like
I don't know much about hair, as you can see.
A BMX racer? Why is this your occupation?
Well, actually, Brad, to tell you the truth, I've been preparing for this since I was a teenager. When I was a teenager, my dad took me to the military base where he worked. And it was the Army's Signal Corps base, Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, where they had a mock radio studio to train Army personnel to be DJs on Armed Forces radio. And I spent an afternoon in the studio. And when I went home from that afternoon, I was bitten by the radio bug and never really looked back. I wanted to be in radio in the worst way. And so as a teenager, I set up a studio in my basement. And if you can see behind me, there's a reel-to-reel tape recorder sitting on the table behind me. And I set up a microphone and a turntable and a reel-to-reel recorder. And I made pretend radio shows in my parents' basement. And flash forward, I went to college. I joined the college radio station, spent 4 years as a broadcaster, got myself into a commercial station, became a production engineer and a newscaster. But the problem with radio, and it's still true today, is for most people, you can be on the radio or you can buy groceries. You usually can't afford to do both. And I needed to make some money, so I ended up moving out of journalism, broadcast and print journalism, and working in corporate PR for about 30 years. And 12 years ago, it came a time in my career when we went through a couple of corporate mergers, and I ended up on the outside looking in. And at that point, I said, what am I going to do for the next chapter? Is it going to be another corporate job with all of the uncertainty that comes with that? Or am I going to try to build something different? And it was right around that time that social media, what we now call social media, but then it was called new media, was just coming up over the horizon. Blogs were starting to be visible, and Facebook was starting to get some traction, and Twitter. My wife heard a story on the radio about podcasting, and she said, with your radio background, you really should be looking into this podcasting thing. I don't know what it is, but it sounds like something you should do. And I started listening, and that's when I realized, aha, this is what I was doing as a teenager, making pretend radio shows. Now let me see if I can make them for people and get them to pay me for it. And
Perfect.
It's worked out okay.
That sounds similar to my career as a magical entertainer. I used to do magic shows in the neighborhood garage, and I ended up doing them full-time, performing as a magician for many, many years. Still
Can you
performing.
do anything, can you get me some,
I certainly can. Do you have a budget? So let's get into, we only got about 2 minutes, maybe a minute and a half. Why don't you let us know how to get a hold of you? You got your book with you. You
Sure.
can show us that.
Okay,
and,
so the book, here's the book. The book is The Business of Podcasting, How to Take Your Podcasting Passion from the Personal to the Professional. And the best way to get to it is our book website, thebusinessofpodcasting.com. You can get all the information about the book. You can listen to podcast interviews that Donna and I have done. There are links to buy the book. It's available, as you can see, in a very nice paperback version, and it's also available on the Amazon Kindle. And we welcome anybody who wants to buy it. And there's also a couple of free downloads on the book website where you can download a checklist or two from the book.
Alrighty, well, I'm going to sign this off so it doesn't take too long because we don't want to take people's valuable time. That's a commodity there. And then what I do is I beam these up to YouTube and propagate them out to blogs and the internet so people can find what they need to find. So if you want to send me any links or whatever, I'll include those in all this stuff and we'll get it out to the world. And if you want to stick around, we'll chat a little bit further. So that's it for now, Steve. I appreciate you taking the time, waking up early and all that kind of stuff.
Thanks so much, Brad. Keep it magic.
Peace.